Morning, everybody. Happy Friday to you. My name is Wes Stewart. I'm president of Virginia Movers and Warehousemen Association, and I want to personally thank you guys for coming out today, braving the cold weather, coming out to maybe learn something, maybe get some answers, or be more confused one way or the other. That's the only two ways this is going to go. But who here is concerned about Obamacare? Okay, that's probably good. Debbie Stocks is here today, and she's got a presentation for us. And Debbie, you are the president of the immediate past president of Virginia Association of Health Underwriters. And Debbie also runs a successful insurance business. But she actually lobbied the General Assembly, right, when they were discussing Obamacare before it got passed. And so I've heard her speak before, and she's really, really got this stuff down. She probably knows more than anybody I know about it. So, without any further ado, Debbie Stocks.
You want me to have the mic? Okay, I'll have the mic. All right. So I do tend to move around a little bit. As Roger knows, I used to be a high school teacher, but I taught French. I won't give this to you in French. But I have a handout for you, but also as a teacher, you don't give things to people to read until you want them to read it. So I'm going to give it to you at the break. That way you're looking up here, and then at the break, I'll give you a handout that'll give you some information. If anybody wants any of this PowerPoint, I'm happy to send it to you. These slides were prepared by Janet Troutwine, who is president of our National Association of Health Underwriters. And so there's a lot of information. Some of it we'll spend some detailed time with. Some of it we'll gloss over a little bit because I think some of it gets into the weeds a bit. But if you have questions.
Debbie, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Completely forgot it. Can we just take 1 second and have everybody introduce themselves?
Yes.
We normally do this, and I just got right past me today. I'm in super high speed today, so you know who I am.
Brenda Queenie from Hampton Roads Moving and Storage, Chesapeake, Virginia. Sarah White from Hampton Roads Moving and Storage, Chesapeake, Virginia.
Stephanie Singer-Vogt, Lloyd's Transfer and Storage, Berryville, Virginia.
Artie Vogt, Lloyd's Transfer and Storage, Berryville.
Billy Swain, Beacons A1 Movers, Norfolk.
Randy Smith, Randall Moving and Storage, Manassas.
John Kuhn, Coleman American Moving Service.
I'm Roger Moody with Virginia Movers.
Sean Francis, the Technology Assurance Group.
Patrick Williams, Executive Moving Systems, Woodbridge.
Deanna Rash, Executive Moving Systems, Woodbridge.
Lina Landrigan with Wells Fargo Bank.
Denise McConnell, Pullen Moving Company. Angie Ellison, Pullen Moving Company.
Reggie Moore, Seaford Transfer in Yorktown.
And Jeff Moore, Seaford Transfer, Yorktown.
Okay. So I want to take a poll first before we go. How many of you offer insurance right now to your employees? Okay. How many of you are smaller groups or sole proprietors where you have your own personal policy or you could have a personal policy? Several? Okay. That will help me as we go through some of this. I will spend some time on what individuals need to anticipate and then some time on what groups need to anticipate. And I know I keep stepping in front of you. I'm sorry. I'll try not to do that. All right. So, oh, wait. There we go. Okay. So first thing we're going to talk a little bit about, I'm not going to get into politics a lot, but we're going to just do a little recap here of where our political situation is right now. And then what's about to change for individuals, what's about to change in the marketplace, and I'll define what I mean by marketplace so that you have a better understanding. What's about to change for employers? So we're going to take a break right after this marketplace, and then we'll come back, what's about to change for employers, and then have some resources and questions for you. All right, so let's talk about the political landscape right now. Obviously, there's a lot of, the two parties are very far apart right now, we'll say. We have two fairly distinct parties in Washington, and they have trouble coming together on any issue to make decisions. And that is part of the challenge right now. You know, Janet defines the House as the Wild, Wild West because they voted to repeal this law 40 times. They keep voting, and then they send it to the Senate, and the Senate doesn't take it up. So, you know, it's a crazy number of times. They keep voting to repeal it, but it won't even be heard in the Senate. And we know that. We all understand that, I think. But it's just kind of interesting. They are proposing a lot of amendments that, again, they will vote to approve, but they never make it to the Senate. So that's some of the problem. When we look at the health reform law, there is this show me mentality. Will you show me how it works? Or you show me how that's going to be better? Or you show me where the money's going to come from before any actions will be taken, which is a good way to look at it, but it is hampering some things. Demonstrating how it will impact business is very important to some and not to others. And that's the problem is, one group will say this is significantly going to impact businesses, and another group doesn't feel that it will impact businesses. So that's part of the problem. States, here's what's interesting. We were talking earlier. Understand that states regulate insurance, not the federal government. So the Bureau of Insurance in Virginia approves rates for policies that are sold in Virginia, and actually approves the policies. So, for example, if you remember in the late fall, November and December, when there was a lot of news report about policies being canceled because they didn't meet the standards and people were losing their insurance and so forth, and the president said, you know, I'm going to put a hold on that and people can keep their policies. He can't do that because it's not federally regulated. It's regulated by the states. So there's a lot of confusion about who's regulating what, because this is a federal law. And even if you talk to the folks at the Bureau of Insurance in Virginia, they'll say, we're not sure what our place is on this, because this is what we've always done to regulate insurance, but now we've been told to do this, but it's not part of what we've been told is our ability under state law to do. So there's some of that fracture that's going on as well.
There are certain standards that the care has to meet, but then that has to be approved by the states, the individual states, for those policies.
Yeah, so technically, yes. Now, here's what is really happening with that. So, and we'll talk about what the coverages are, but I call it ACA, Healthcare Reform Affordable Care Act. You'll hear me say ACA, dictates 10 essential benefits that must be covered under the plan and the actuarial value. So where the states are now coming in is they're accepting, that's part of the federal law, and we have to follow that. Our insurers are proposing their plans and their rates. So the states are now following the federal law to make sure those things are covered, and then they're determining if the rates are acceptable or not. And it's an actuarial value. The insurance companies, one of the kind of big misunderstandings about those bad insurance companies is that they can just propose any rate they want. And that's not true. When they propose a rate, they have to demonstrate the actuarial value of that plan and that rate is justified. Okay? So you can't say, I'm going to have this plan and I'm going to charge $800 for an individual without showing that it would cost $700 a month to actually run that plan and pay the claims. That's a very simple version of it. But they have to demonstrate that, in fact, that plan would cost that much to run with a smaller profit in there. They can't just ask for any rate at all. And that's why you saw in the news, again, last summer and early fall, some Bureau of Insurances were rejecting rate increases because they said they weren't justified. So
It's good to know.
yeah, so that's kind of how they come. We're going to talk about Medicaid expansion, and well, actually, I'll talk about this now. So as you know, the state of Virginia, under our prior governor, chose not to expand Medicaid. And it's interesting, I'll tell you, Bill Bolling was for the Medicaid expansion. So there was a lot of contention in the Republican Party in the state of Virginia about whether to expand Medicaid. But if you talk to Bill Hazel, who is our secretary in the state of Virginia of HHS, he said, no, Medicaid is already the monster that's eating the machine of Virginia, if you will. We can't afford to expand it. And Bill Bolling says, yeah, but if we don't, there are going to be people who are left in a donut, if you will, in the center of that donut. And we'll talk about how they might not have coverage. So he was for it, and he felt like he made a business case for expanding Medicaid. So even in our state, we had a lot of contention about whether we should expand Medicaid. Now, our new governor, McAuliffe, is putting forth some proposals to expand Medicaid. And so that's the big issue in the Virginia General Assembly right now. I'm seeing a lot of things coming forward about that. And right now, it's being opposed, but we'll see. That'll be the big issue in Virginia, I think, this year, is whether we expand Medicaid. Obviously, budget concerns, and we'll talk a little bit about how that's affecting us. Lack of information from the federal government. I think that's a problem. What I think is even a bigger problem is changing information from the federal government. This is where my frustration comes in as a broker, is we get our businesses ready to do something, to make a change, and then regulations change, and we've got to change again. So we all got prepared for 2014 for all employers of 50-plus employees. You must provide insurance. Well, as you might know, that got postponed. Actually, the penalties got postponed. The law's still there. We'll talk about that, too. So that is everyone's frustration, I think, is that as the law, the bill is a huge bill, but the regulations that have been written to implement the bill are even more onerous. We're talking tens of thousands of pages on this bill. So it's the changing. The lack of information is bad enough, but it's the changing information that makes it difficult. We get ready. I can't tell you how many times last year we got our employers ready to do something. And they said, okay, never mind, you don't have to do that yet. Okay, let's get ready to do this. No, we don't have to do that yet. So that's what I think is tough. Extreme variances in attitude. I think we all know about that. Okay. So let's talk about, and I know there's a lot on here, but let's talk about kind of where we are. So what's already been implemented? Grandfathered plans, if you had a plan. This really only applies to individuals. All small group plans changed along the way over the last couple of years. There really aren't any grandfathered group plans out there anymore. They've all pretty much gone away. So grandfather plans are still in effect. You know, one of my frustrations with the grandfather plans is any small change that you made to that plan removed your grandfather status. And so a lot of people who might have increased their deductible lost their grandfather status without knowing that they lost their grandfather status. So small business tax credits, we already have this in place, and it's something to look at. The requirements are a bit stringent, and the filing for it is a bear, but if you're eligible for a tax credit, it might be a good idea. You must, as the employer, pay at least 50% of the employee-only premium. And we do remove employees who make more than $50,000. We also remove the owners and owners' family. So, and it is just up to 25 employees. So if you have more than 25 employees, you wouldn't be eligible. It is a very small group. If you have higher compensated employees, we pull those out. The problem that I see with this is if you're a real small group, let's say you're a 5 or 8 man group, and it's a husband, wife, and maybe a son that works in the business, you've got to pull all those people out. Now you're looking at 3 people on health insurance, and you're going to file for a tax credit for these 3 people. I promise you the filing isn't worth it. I wish it were a little bit easier to file, but don't give up on it if it's something that you think you want to look at. September 23rd, all plans cover dependents up to age 26. I don't know how you feel about that, but anyway, that's what happens. No pre-X for children. Restrictions on rescissions and annual lifetime limits. Here's what I'm going to say about that. I was doing a presentation about a week or so ago, and one of the persons raised their hand and said, well, at least they can't cancel people's policies because they had high claims. Well, guess what? They never could do that. There was a short time period in which they could cancel someone's policy if they committed fraud, if they misrepresented their application. And in all of my years insurance, I've had that happen to 2 people, and both people misrepresented their information significantly. Other than that, I've seen people take a policy out, and 2 months later they had a huge claim. It wasn't canceled. So that was one of the, I think, misunderstandings about what happened. Now, again, insurance is regulated by state, and that's how Virginia's law was. Other states probably needed a little bit more. The other thing that I will say is, some folks said, well, you couldn't get insurance if you were sick or had a health condition, you couldn't get insurance. In Virginia, you could. If you had prior coverage, HIPAA law applied to you, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act applied to you, and you could get insurance with no pre-X. As long as you didn't have more than 63-day lapse in insurance, you were guaranteed a policy with no pre-existing condition exclusions. That was always our law in Virginia. If you had gone without insurance for a while and you were sick or had a major health condition, you could still get insurance, and you had a 1-year pre-X exclusion. So that's how it worked in Virginia. Again, not all states were that. I know Tennessee did not have that, so they had some issues. Let's see. Discrimination rules, that's been delayed, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. We just got an update on that. There's a new coverage appeals process, and medical loss ratio requirements. So you may have heard about this, MLRs. You may hear about that in the news, medical loss ratios. And what that says is on small group plans, the insurance company must use at least 85% of the dollars on claims. So whatever premiums come in, if I take a premium of $100 that comes into Anthem, 85 of those dollars must be used to pay claims. The other 15% can be for billing, administration. Remember, insurance companies pay state taxes and so forth. If it's an individual, it's 80% of those dollars must be spent on claims. If the insurance company charges more premium and they don't spend at least 85%, they must give a refund back to folks. I got a $9 refund last year. How exciting is that? So, what that tells you is they were in Virginia following a lot of those medical loss ratios. All right, in 2013, summary of coverage requirements for all plans, SBCs. If you have a group health plan, I bet your broker told you you have to provide these SBCs to your employees. Summary of benefits and coverage. This was required. It's a specific format. It's 4 pages, landscape, with a specific font, in a specific order, with 2 specific medical examples, pregnancy and diabetes. It must be laid out exactly that way, with exactly that information, in that order, in that font, on those 4 pages. So very restrictive. I find them more confusing than our old SBCs, but anyway. and they must be provided to all employees, and there are restrictions about how they're provided. So seriously, if you offer group health insurance, make sure you are sending out your SBC. It needs to be sent out at renewal. It's actually 30 days prior to renewal, unless you change plans, and with a new hire. If your employees have at least 1 hour of computer time with internet a day, you can send it to them via email, electronically. If you cannot document that they have at least 1 hour of computer time with internet, you must mail it to them. Or you can hand deliver it and have them sign a form that they received it. Very restrictive. We were in safe harbor last year. We're coming out of that this year. There are fines. So you want to be sure that you do that. And your broker should help you with that. Okay. Let's see. Exchange notification requirements for all employers. This is your Department of Labor notice, or DOL notice. And I know we sent one out to all of our customers as a template. You can find it on the Department of Labor site. Here's the tricky part about this, and we're going to go over this a little bit later too. It does not matter if you offer insurance or not. You're still required as an employer to provide it to employees. Whether you offer insurance or not, whether you have full-time or part-time, you are required to send this notice to all employees. That was the big misunderstanding last year. People would say, I don't offer insurance. I don't have to send it out. Yes, you do. So it's a specific notice that talks about the availability of insurance on the exchange, and it also indicates whether or not you offer insurance, right? But that was one of our big requirements last year. Everybody was scrambling to get those out. Yeah, delivered exactly the same way as the SBC. Employee FSA contributions capped at $2,500. This is flexible spending account. Any of you use flexible spending accounts in your groups? Yeah. HSAs and FSAs also eliminated over-the-counter drugs. You cannot use your FSA or HSA dollars for over-the-counter drugs, so that changed. Comparative effective research funding, tax, we'll talk a little bit about taxes, and expanded W-2 reporting. That's actually been postponed a bit. We'll talk about that too. All right, 2014, individual mandate is now in play. So technically, everyone is required to have insurance this year, and we'll talk about some more details of that. Employer responsibility. So on the employer responsibility, your plan must meet the minimum value. That's the actuarial value of bronze, silver, gold, platinum, which equates to 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%. We'll talk about that. If you have a group health plan, I promise you, you meet those requirements because the carriers made sure you did. Anthem, Southern Health, Coventry, Optima, and so forth made sure you did. Insurance exchanges, well, we all know those are open, don't we? How about that news? Last fall was just kind of crazy in my office, and I'm sure if you were trying to apply for insurance, it was probably a little crazy for you. In Virginia, we decided not to have a state exchange, and again, that decision was made more based on we don't know what the actual cost is going to be, so we're going to stay away from it. We're on the federally facilitated exchange or federally facilitated marketplace, depending on how you want to call it. It's been rebranded more as a marketplace. Health insurance exchanges, private coverage subsidies, Medicaid expansion. Obviously, we didn't do that. Insurance market reforms and new coverage standards for individual and small group market. These are the 10 essential benefits. We'll talk about that a little bit more. National premium tax for fully insured plans. It's interesting, if you go on the exchange and you go to look at a plan, it will lay out what each of the taxes are as part of your premium. It will give you your premium, and then it will give you the health insurance tax. It will give you the marketplace tax. So it will list all those out. Auto enrollment for groups of 200 plus. Anybody have in their business more than 200 employees? No? Okay. This is just saying that if you have more than 200 employees, and this has been postponed a little bit, those employees must be automatically enrolled. You don't wait for them to fill out an enrollment form. you do it for them. Automatic expansion of state small group markets to 100 employees. So right now, the small group market is 2 to 50. In 2015 or 16, we're not sure yet, the small group is going to be 2 to 100. So there's a few changes there. I don't know why. State can let large group join exchanges, triggering market reforms for all fully insured large groups. We are so far behind on that whole exchange thing with the small group. We'll talk about that. And the Cadillac tax. This just got postponed. Just in the last week got postponed again. Anybody see that in the news? So here's the problem. The IRS cannot define what highly compensated means. So they said they're having trouble defining what is a highly compensated employee. So they can't decide who would then have to pay the tax. So I don't know where we go on that. We'll see. Change ahead. Expect delays. Well, yeah. Here we go. So what's been delayed so far? The employer mandate penalties, not the employer mandate. So if you have more than 50 full-time equivalents, and we'll talk about calculating equivalents, not full-time employees, full-time equivalents, you are required to offer them insurance this year, all full-time employees. All right, so let me give you an example. I have an employer that is 2 restaurants. He has 2 restaurants that he owns, obviously, and a catering business. He has over 100 employees. Now, for the last 5 years, he's been offering insurance to his managers and assistant managers, somewhere between 7 and 10 employees, depending on, what's been going on and who's there and so forth. So, but between 7 and 10 employees, he's been offering insurance only to those managers and assistant managers. Now, the law says first we have to calculate his full-time equivalents, right? He only has 7 managers, but he has over 100 employees. Once we do those calculations, he actually ended up with 53 full-time equivalents. So he's required to offer insurance. Now the catch is he won't be penalized this year if he doesn't. So what do you think most employers are doing? They're waiting. He decided to go ahead and do it, and at the end of the day, he has about 30 full-time employees. He only has to offer it to the full-times, not the part-time. So he's not offering it to 100 employees. He's offering it to the 30 full-time employees. Great question. Well, so we're only looking at the equivalent part to see if you're over 50. Yes. That calculation is just to determine whether you are required or not to offer. Correct. However, all people must have insurance. Now, that's a great question. And we'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to what employers should expect. But what you should know as an employer is if you are offering insurance and your employees decline it, your responsibility ends at that point. It's up to them to get their insurance. If you have offered it and it's affordable, we'll talk about what affordability means. Your responsibility ends at that point. If they choose not to take it and they choose not to go out and get their own policy, they're going to get fined, not you. So there are some safeguards here. Mandatory employer reporting to the exchanges. This is the Department of Labor notice. So basically where we are reporting whether we offer insurance or not. That's that DOL notice. We're telling the employees, yes, we offer insurance. It's available to spouses and dependents or not, and it's affordable. The employee goes on to the exchange. He wants to get a subsidy. He can't get a subsidy because you offered him insurance at his employer. We'll talk more about subsidies too. Okay. Other federal exchange pair downs. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Just above that, the SHOP, Employee Choice Premium Aggregation. So SHOP stands for Small Business Health Policies. This is simply the exchange for small businesses. So we have the exchange for individuals or the marketplace, the online place where you go to find a plan. for individuals. SHOP is for small businesses. Right now, the SHOP isn't open. It was supposed to open November 1st. It didn't. We don't know when it will. But right now, or when it does, it has one plan to choose from. Who's going to go on that? I mean, let's be serious. Out-of-pocket limit transition, we'll talk more about that. And discrimination testing rules. Again, this is part of that highly compensated thing that got delayed. So, all right. What happened with our out-of-pocket limits? There's a lot here. I'm not going to go through all of this. In February of 2013, rules came out. So this is what I'm talking about the law is a certain number of pages, but then the rules to implement the law are so much bigger. And on Friday, we'll get what's called a data dump, and we'll get 10 rules or regulations. Here are the interim rules. Here are the interim final rules. And it might be on one piece of the legislation, and it's 100 pages. So we might get 5 of those on Friday, and we've got to read 500 pages to figure out how do we implement this piece of the law. And that's where it just gets so onerous. I mean, it's just like it or not, you have to admit that gets onerous, trying to see what we do there. But in any event, the out-of-pocket limits, the understanding when the law was first passed is the out-of-pocket limits, people would have to pay less for their insurance and would have less out-of-pocket. But as the law turns out, the out-of-pocket limits are actually pretty high. And so if you look at a lot of the plans, especially on the individual side, those out-of-pocket limits are pretty high. And that was reported in a New York Times story in August. Out-of-pocket limits to all grandfathered plans. This did change. So we did have some plans that had a maximum benefit. I had an individual health plan that had a maximum benefit of $5 million per person per lifetime. So in my family of 4, each of us could not get more benefit than $5 million. And I was fine with that. You may not be fine with that. I haven't seen a case where we've had anybody have claims that high. I've seen as much as 2.1 million, but I've not seen 5. But that has all gone away, and there cannot be a lifetime maximum on any policies. So you should see that on your policies now. All individual copays will count towards the deductible. In the past, this was not true. If you had a deductible on a plan, you could still be paying doctor copays, prescription copays. Same is true for the out-of-pocket limit. If you hit your out-of-pocket limit, you could still be paying doctor copays. That all had to change. And that all goes towards your max out-of-pocket now. And some of this is real detailed, so I don't want to spend too much time. This part right here actually has to do with employer groups that are commonly owned. And it's possible that we have 3 companies that are commonly owned, and one company provides one type of insurance, and one company provides another. Wes, you could be in that group. You're not, but you could be where in Virginia you offer Coventry Health, and in North Carolina you offer Anthem, and in Florida you offer Aetna. You could be in that, and this rule would apply to you, and they would give you some relief in terms of how those things work. So if you're a multi-state, you could be in that particular situation. But we don't have a lot of folks that are doing that. Same, I talked about this, the prescription has to apply to the out-of-pocket maximum. I don't know how familiar you are with mental health parity, but a couple of years ago, even in Virginia, we talked about mental health parity. It used to be there was a limit on the number of visits you could have for mental health or substance abuse, and they have since changed that. Autism was the other one that came up a few years ago, and we see that coverage as well. All right. What's still happening? We talked about the individual mandate. Market reforms went into effect January 1. Exchanges, the marketplace notice. This is what determines, remember I was saying it doesn't matter whether you offer insurance or not, or whether you have full or part-time employees. You still have to send out that Department of Labor notice. this applies to everybody who's under FLSA, Fair Labor Standards Act. Basically, it says, do you generate more than $500,000 in revenue per year or not? And if you do, and most small businesses do, you're required to send out that DOL notice. Okay. Affordability minimum value test. Again, this is kind of a moot point, and the only reason I say that is because the minimum value anyway, because carriers did that work for us. Technically, under the law, it says that you as the employer are responsible for determining whether your plan meets minimum value. Well, how do you know that? I mean, how are you going to look at your plan and decide, does this have a 60% actuarial value? Do you even know how to calculate that? But the carriers have taken that out of your hands, so you don't need to worry about that. The affordability test, though, you do have to worry about. And we'll talk to you about it, and I'm sure your broker is talking to you about it to make sure that you're meeting that. Because if you meet that 50 plus, if you're more than 50 full-time equivalents, number one, you're required to offer insurance, and you're required for it to be affordable. Affordable basically means this. For an employee, he or she cannot spend more than 9.5% of their income on their monthly premium. 9.5% of their income on their monthly premium. There's some great calculators out there. I'll be happy to share them with you if you shoot me an email. That's the affordability test. If you offer a plan and you don't make enough contribution to the premium so that the plan is affordable, i.e. less than 9.5% of their income, you now can be fined. That's why that's important. Yeah.
Can you put in additional amounts for only the employees that don't meet the 9%? If someone else in the organization is meeting the 9% test, can you tailor it that way, or does it have to be? Does your contribution have to be the same for everybody?
It does have to be the same for everybody, based on Department of Labor standards a long time ago, not this law. So it does have to be the same. And it is based on your least expensive plan that you offer. So, and again, it's only for the individual. So let's say that you offer an HMO plan and a PPO buy-up plan. We're going to look at the HMO plan, and we're going to look at what is the premium that the employee only, we're not looking at dependents, no spouse or children, the employee pays. And is that less than 9.5% of their income? Now, if they choose that PPO plan, doesn't matter. If they choose to add spouse and children, also doesn't matter.
Okay, in our situation, everybody in this room, we have a lot of employees that might be full-time 5 months out of the year, 7 months out of the year, they're in part-time.
Couple of things on that. So, first of all, we do have some relief for seasonal workers. So that's one thing that we look at. We are looking at full-time employees. We aren't looking at part-time status. So we do look at that. And I will tell you, for folks who make minimum wage, I believe the maximum monthly amount they can pay is $98. So most of you are going to be fine. Yeah, most of you are going to be fine.
In the summer when they're working 60 hours or more versus in the winter when they might work 30 hours in a week, do you have to calculate it based on the 30 hours or on, you see what I'm saying?
I see exactly what you're saying. It is based on that time right there. So, but we do give relief again for seasonal workers. So we do have some ways to work on that.
But they're not really seasonal. You know, I mean,
yeah, they're just right. They're just working fewer hours at that point. Remember, if they dip below 30 hours, you do not have to offer them insurance.
But is that based on an annual?
Is what based on the annual? The 9.5% of income?
No, the 30 hours. Because if like I'm saying, they work 60 hours, they're full time. They're working 60 hours in June, but in February they're working. They work 1 week that just happens to be a 30-hour work week. Then how does that play into the full-time, part-time?
it is going to go month to month, and I know that's going to create challenges for you guys.
Yeah.
But it is going month to month. Now, you know, there is consideration and understanding of that with these workforces that we have a number of them that ebb and flow, if you will. And if they are a part-time employee, they're under 30 hours, you do not have to offer them insurance and therefore do not have to meet the requirement. So understand that too. If they're working less than that 30 hours, you are not required to offer them that insurance, and therefore you are not required to meet that minimum.
But Debbie, let's say the guy gets his policy, he's meeting full-time status, but halfway through the year, he doesn't meet full-time status. We drop his insurance, but now he's making 2 weeks later, a month later, he's back up to those 40 hours a week or 30 plus hours a week. Does he have to wait to open enrollment?
No, because he's had an employment status change.
So he might have insurance this week, but not this
Well,
week.
and I know, and they know. So here's what I'm going to say to that. There's a couple of things. One, if you can keep him on the insurance, you are allowed to.
That's what I'm thinking is
Yes.
chances are we're all probably just going to leave him on the insurance. It's
Right.
just what we do now.
Right. And here's the other thing. You are only fined if he goes to the exchange, takes out a plan, and receives a subsidy. Okay?
Gotcha.
So you can help yourself, if you will, or fix this problem. If you can keep them on the insurance, then he can't go on the exchange and get a subsidy, and therefore you cannot be fined. So as they kind of ebb and flow, even if they drop below 30, you're still allowed to keep them on your insurance. And if you are, then he couldn't go on the exchange anyway and get a subsidy. It is very tricky for your business. But remember, if he's under 30 hours and it doesn't meet the 9.5%, it doesn't matter because he's not considered full-time.
And the other thing that you said is the minimum wage employee pays $98 a month. I don't think any of our people are minimum wage. Most everybody here is higher than minimum wage. So with that being said, I think so if an individual is $250 a month, a young guy in good health, which most of our helpers or drivers are, and a company pays half to $125, chances are you're going to meet that. Okay.
Yeah. I think you're going to find that you're probably okay, but there are calculators you can look at, and we can help you with that if you want to see a calculator that will help you determine what's going to happen there. It's very tricky. We have a group that we're working with up in King George County, and they are a tulip business. They actually grow tulips and are a wholesaler. You may know them. And they have a lot of employees. They have a lot of seasonal employees, number one, but then they still have a lot of employees, but it could be 60 hours and then it could be 20 hours. And it is kind of back and forth and back and forth. And we're trying to work with them to figure out what are the calculations that you need to make and to whom do you need to offer these benefits.
Debbie, let me ask you this question. If we bring in help in the summertime and we call them a seasonal status, at 90 days, at that point, could we say, okay, you're either going to go away because you're not seasonal anymore, or we're going to keep you on at either a part-time status or a full-time status? As long as we're documenting those status changes, that would work fine. And the first 90 days, is there a limit on how long somebody can be seasonal? Could they be seasonal 12 months?
No, they cannot be seasonal 12 months. There is a calculation there. 90 days is fine.
Okay.
And here's the other thing that I will say, and I am not qualified to speak on this, so I would recommend that you talk to an HR consultant or if you have an HR department. Your handbook will define a lot of this. What does your handbook say? What I find is sometimes people developed a handbook 5 years ago and they haven't revised it. You need to revise it. Is 30 hours? Remember, 30 hours is the lowest or the highest you can go to say someone's, how do I want to say that? If they work 30 hours, they're full-time. It might used to have been 40 hours in your mind and in your handbook. If they were a 40-hour employee or a 35-plus hour employee, they were full-time. No, the federal law now says 30. So if they are working 30 or more hours, they are full-time. And you should make sure your handbook says that. All right? However, most of the insurance companies will tell you that if they work 25 or more hours, you can let them be eligible for benefits. And that's an average. They understand that, look, there may be a week or two here where it's lower, but then it's going to be higher again. So they would prefer that you keep them on instead of this on and off. They would prefer that. The carriers would. And here's the other thing that I would say, whether you meet that 50 plus employees or not, why are you offering benefits in the first place? You're offering it to attract and retain really good people, right? This legislation should not change your decision. If you're offering it to attract good employees and to keep those good employees, then try to keep offering health insurance. Work on things that you can change in your plan to make it more affordable. But I don't have a single employer that has said to me, we're dropping it. We're just going to pay the penalty. Because they're offering it for a different reason, not just because of the pricing of it. They're offering it to get good employees and to keep them. And I know you have these challenges as well, especially some of these helpers. They come and go. But if you have something that can keep them, you know that's a cost savings to your business. You don't have to train the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. So I would say keep that in mind. All right, so affordability is that 9.5% minimum value. The carriers took care of that for you. We talked about the SBCs. PCORI is Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute fee. That went into place this year. Anybody in here offer an HRA, which is a health reimbursement arrangement? No? Okay, that PCORI fee applies specifically to HRAs. I have a couple groups that have HRAs. So an HRA is an option to an HSA. And with an HRA, I might have a plan that has a $3,000 deductible. And let's say my employees are used to a copay plan. They've not had a deductible, or maybe they've just had a $500 deductible. But I find out that I can save 50% on my premiums by moving them to a $3,000 deductible. That's a lot of savings, right? But, to say to your employee, oh, by the way, you're going to have $3,000 out of pocket instead of that $500 that you used to, would not retain good employees. So what employers might do is set up what's called an HRA, where it's a promise to pay. You don't have to deposit money into an account, but you promise if the employee spends more than $500 that you'll pick up the next X dollars. And it might be I, as the employer, will pick up the next 1,000 or 2,000 or 2,500, whatever it happens to be.
So you're sharing in the risk.
Exactly.
So you're betting that they're going to take care of themselves and they're never going to reach that deductible. You enjoy the benefit of a lower premium.
Exactly. And statistically, most employees, most people in general, only 20% of the people are going to hit that $500 deductible. I've never had a situation where an employer did not make out quite well. That restaurant group that we were talking about, we moved them. We saved $26,000 for a 7-man group. 7-man group, we saved $26,000 in a year. They had $600 in claims. Woohoo!
Got some talking to do.
He's my favorite. Actually, so it can be, yeah, we should. It can be big savings. And even if people make claims, I have another group that's just a 8 or 9-man medical group. They did the same thing. They moved to an HRA. They cut their premiums in half. He has paid some claims, but nowhere near what he saved in premium. Because again, statistically, most people do not spend more than $500 or $1,000 a year on their health care. All right, so that's an HRA. W-2 reporting requirements. We'll look at the specific number here in a minute, but based on what I know of your group, you don't have to do it. It's really applies to the larger groups now, where you have to report on their W-2 what is the value of the insurance that you pay. So if you're paying 50% of the premium, let's say the premium's $250 a month, you're paying $125 a month, that has to be reported on their W-2.
Is that done through the cafeteria plan?
No, because that's the employer contribution. Now, the employee contribution that's coming out pre-tax, yes, is done through the cafeteria plan. But this is a W-2 reporting of the employer contribution, which has historically never been on a W-2. Now, I'm going to be a cynic here for just a minute. The IRS says that's just so we can track who has insurance and who doesn't. My fear is that eventually that's going to become something to tax. Right now, as an employer, this is a business expense to you, and so it's not taxed. But my fear is that down the road, it's going to become a taxed benefit to the employee or somehow be tracked for taxing. That's the cynic in me. We'll see. Sorry, okay. What's about to change for individuals? We'll go through this kind of quickly because I know a lot of you don't have situations here.
Is this halfway? Keep going. Yeah, we're doing
good. Okay. All right. So this individual mandate, are you subject or are you not? Golly, there's a whole lot of wrangling over this. But if you're a religious group, an undocumented resident, an American Indian, pay more than 8% of your take-home pay for employer coverage. So low income, you don't pay federal taxes. Someone who falls into Medicaid expansion coverage hole, we'll talk about that. Someone with a hardship exemption, or you get your insurance through your job, then if the answer to those questions is yes, then you're not going to pay a penalty as an individual. If the answer to the questions are no, then here are your penalties. This is the interesting part that I want to get to. This year, it's $95 or 1% of income per person, okay, per adult. 2015, it goes to $325. 2016, it goes to $695. This is where I think it'll get interesting. $95. You telling me a 22-year-old's going to take insurance instead of pay $25? Heck no. If he wasn't going to take insurance before, he isn't going to take it now. He's going to pay that $25 if you can catch up with him. Otherwise, and the fact is, if he doesn't get a tax refund, you can't go after him for that. It has to come out of his tax refund. So if he's not getting a tax refund, he's not going to do it. But but that's where I think we're going to see more participation of the young invincibles. Everybody's seen in the news that they are not signing up right now. And that, frankly, is not a surprise to me. If you look at the rates now versus what they were 3 years ago, if I couldn't get them to sign up for a premium of $78, you think I can get them to sign up for a premium of $230? Can't do it. So I did have a big scramble of young people signing up at the end of 2013 because we were still on the lower rates there. And we'll talk about why those rates change. I won't go there yet, but we'll talk about why they're changing. All right. Proposed rule on minimum essential coverages. Insurance policies sold in a small or large groups. These are employer plans, basically. Minimum essential coverage does not include a standalone HRA. So there were some employers who did not offer health insurance, but they set up that HRA that I told you about, that promise to pay. They would set that up for $2,000 a year. And they would say to their employees, whatever medical, dental expenses you have, I'll pay up to $2,000. I'll reimburse you for them. There was no health insurance underlying there. It was just the standalone HRA. That is no longer considered creditable coverage. So employers cannot offer a standalone HRA. They have to have an underlying medical plan. HIPAA accepted benefits. These benefits don't follow HIPAA regulations. Things like vision, dental, cancer policies, these are not considered creditable coverage under healthcare reform. You can't offer employees an accident plan and a cancer plan and a dental plan and say, okay, that's my health insurance. Just isn't allowed. Tax credits. All right, so this applies to individuals, and you can see if you are between 104% of federal poverty level, there's a sliding scale. Here's a great place to get some information. Kaiser Family Foundation. If you just Google Kaiser Family Foundation and then look for their estimator tool or subsidy estimator tool, it'll take you 20 seconds to figure out whether you're eligible for a subsidy. Kaiser Family Foundation. I think it's kff.org, but I'm not sure about that. It's a great tool to just go see. I do this a lot with my individual clients to see whether they're eligible for a subsidy. Now, why does it matter? The marketplace or the exchange. So let me go back to that. That is just an online place like Amazon to go buy insurance. That's all that is. Nothing magical about it. It's just buying insurance online. There are still the plans that we sell in Virginia. Those are not federal plans. So if you go on the federal exchange and you're a person in Virginia, you only see Virginia plans. All right? If you're eligible for a subsidy, the only place you can get that subsidy is on the exchange. So I, as an agent, can help my customer find a plan on the exchange or off the exchange. So I need to know whether they're eligible for a subsidy or not, because if they are, I need to get them on the exchange. Furthermore, in addition to premium subsidies, they could also be eligible for coverage assistance. So let's say, for example, that there's a plan that has $1,000 deductible, but I am below the 250% of poverty level. Well, my deductible might go down to $600. I don't have to pay as much of a deductible. My copays may go from $30 to $20.
Debbie, what is the poverty level currently?
I want to say it's right around 10, 9, or 11. I can tell you that
Somebody up to 40,000 could
45 individual.
45,000 could possibly be eligible for a subsidy.
Yes. And we'll see later how that's calculated, but it's basically, here's what I will say. If it's a young person making $45,000, they probably will not be eligible for a subsidy because the premium is lower. It's based on the level 2 silver plan on the exchange, what that premium is. It's kind of a convoluted thing. So they can get, I have a customer that, like it or not, they're going from a plan that they have right now where their premium is about $600 a month for a couple to a plan that's $1,300 a month, but they're only paying $100 because they get that much in a subsidy. So they're going to a much richer plan with a much higher premium, except they aren't paying the premium because they have low income. They're paying about $100.
These are for individual plans.
These are individual plans, yeah. Yeah, for the small group, we go to the tax credits. All right, Congressional Budget Office take on the subsidies. So here, this is the one I really want to point out. 56% of individual exchange customers will get a subsidy. This is what the CBO said. Did you see the report out last week? 79% of people on the marketplace are getting a subsidy. 79%. All I will say to you is, how are we going to afford that? If we don't have the young people on there, right, and we have 79%, a much higher percentage than what they estimated that are getting a subsidy, how are we going to afford that? And the news recently, if you will, and in fact, I got an update on it today. I'll tell you about that. But the news recently has been, are we going to need a bailout for the insurance companies? Well, I'm not a big fan of bailouts, but I can see where it's coming from. I just got an update on my phone this morning that Moody's downgraded the futures of insurance companies from stable to negative because of this. So I don't know what will happen.
How can that be good?
No, frankly, I've told Wes this, and those of you that I've talked to before, I have been following this legislation since it was proposed. None of this is a surprise. I know people are surprised, but it's not that surprising if you think about it.
Debbie, I just don't understand what's driving it. It sounds like people were getting the care that they wanted anyway.
And I will tell you, in my own practice, what's happened is my 90% of my customers that were doing very well and paying reasonable premiums are having premium increases. And of the 10% remaining, 5% were what we call HIPAA customers, which means they had a significant health condition and they were paying a higher premium. And for some of them, it was not affordable. It's better for 5% of them. So it's worse for 90% and better for 5. And I'm not just saying that to say it. I'm telling you based on numbers, based on what their premiums were and what they are now, or will be. We'll talk about how we avoided that for a little bit. It's worse for most of them. So, we were talking earlier this morning, and I said, for that 5%, we would have been better off not to set up an exchange, just give them free health insurance. We would have been better off. It would have cost us less money than all the money that we've spent so far. So in Virginia, all of our carriers offered us an early renewal. So no matter when you renewed in 2014, you were allowed to renew in December of 2013. And so if you wanted to, if you chose that renewal, you could keep your rates, or you might have had a slight increase, but you could keep your rates until December of 2014. So that's what happened with us. The few people that didn't take that, their plans were being canceled, but they were 10 people in my practice that could get a subsidy and would do better on the exchange. So they wanted their plan to cancel. Yeah. But everybody else took the early renewal. And I'm telling you what a scramble that was. But, you're basically, people renew different months of the year. You basically had to take everybody and try to renew them December 1. But they were able to keep their plan and keep their rate. But it's just for one more year. And I'll tell you this. So I am a big fan of high deductibles. I have a $10,000 deductible on my health insurance plan. And you might think I'm crazy, but I have 4 people in my family. When I first set up the plan, I was paying less than $300 a month. Now I think my premium at my renewal in December went to $390 a month for my family of 4, but we do have a $10,000 deductible, so that's pretty high. We could take insurance through my husband's employer for about $2,200 a month for a family of 4. All right, so I'm looking at that. I save $1,800 a month. Multiply that by 12 months. Do I care if I have a $10,000 deductible? No, because I save so much in premium, I could easily pay that, and we rarely use our insurance. So I'm accepting some of that risk. Well, my plan is no longer allowed under this legislation. And that makes me mad because I like my plan and I like my rate. My rate's going up to over $900 a month. I mean, my husband and I looked at each other. $600 a month is a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Sorry, it's about 500 and change. That's a lot of money to have an increase. And I was happy with my plan. I did not have maternity coverage. I promise you, I'm not having any more children. My husband is not going to have any children. We did not need maternity coverage, but we have it, by golly. So, that's where I see the problem is I now have maternity coverage. Yay. Oh, why do I care? I have a customer who's 62. She has maternity coverage and she has pediatric dental. So just in case those non-existent children she has need to go to the dentist, she's covered. And free birth control at 62. I mean, these are silly, silly things. But go back to that first slide that I talked about, the political landscape. We can't get this crap fixed. Sorry, I'm a little passionate about this.
I agree. It is frustrating. After all this work, you would think there would be more than 5% of people that would be helped.
And they're not. It's unfortunate, but they're not. I also got a little update today that even the people who are eligible for insurance and subsidies, many of them still don't know that they're eligible for insurance and subsidies, and so they still haven't signed up. So we go back to those however many million Americans. It was not 38 million, I'll tell you that. That was a number that was bannered about, but it was closer to the 7 or 8. They still aren't insured. And the majority of people who did get a plan on the exchange already had insurance. They actually already had insurance and just exchanged that for this one on the marketplace. So we didn't gain a whole lot of new insureds. That's the problem. So anyway, if you listen to some folks, they will tell you it's gonna crash under its own weight. I certainly think that's a possibility. All right, who gets a subsidy? You're single, you work for a company with 50 full-time equivalents that offers an affordable bronze plan. This meets the minimum actuarial value. No, you're not eligible. Spouse and children of an individual who works for a company. No. This is where the challenge is, though, I will say. This is where there needs to be a change. So I have an employer that offers insurance. He's small group. Did you guys hear the report? Probably 4 or 5 months ago, UPS dropped spousal coverage. Yeah. And there was an uproar. How dare they do that? They did it actually for a good reason. Because if you have spousal coverage, like your plan, you're required to offer spousal coverage. You can't pull that out. If you have a plan that's deemed affordable, remember I said 9.5% of income, but only on the employee, right? If it's deemed affordable for the employee, it's deemed affordable for the spouse, whether it is or not. So let's say that I have a plan and the premium is $250 for an employee. The employer's paying 50% of that. To add the spouse, it's another $400, and the employer doesn't pay any of that. And it's really not affordable for them. Too bad. You can't get a subsidy. Well, that's flawed because we were trying to make it more affordable. So that's why UPS dropped spousal coverage, so that they could. We don't offer spousal coverage. So now you can get a subsidy as a spouse only. Employee gets their insurance there, but the spouse could get a subsidy. But with a small group, small and mid-market group, you can't remove spouses. You have to keep them on there. So I've got a group right now that has a big challenge with that. Let's see, spouse of an employee who works for a large employer with a spousal carve-out like UPS. Employee and family who are offered coverage by a company with 30 full-time equivalents, but even the single premium for the low-cost plan is unaffordable. Individual with an income, so they are eligible for a subsidy. Individual with an income of 85% of the federal poverty level in a state that does not expand Medicaid, they are still not eligible for a subsidy. That's that donut that I talked about, and that's where we are in Virginia. If you're at 85 to 100% of poverty level, you are not eligible for a subsidy under the legislation, and we did not expand Medicaid in Virginia. So there are going to be some folks who are making $8,000 to $10,000, $11,000 a year, but they're not eligible for a subsidy, and they're not eligible for Medicaid. That's going to be a problem. That's where we're going to see some people fall through the cracks. Single male, 25 years old, no employer coverage, and an income of 125% of federal poverty level that wants to buy the exchange's Young and Invincible catastrophic plan. He is not eligible. There are a number of plans on the exchange that will not give a subsidy if you're young, only because the premium is too low to require it. But that catastrophic plan is only available for people 30 and under. Well, I'm not 30 and under, so I can't have my $10,000 deductible. Still upset about that. All right, I'm not going to go through all of this. These are just some examples of what happens with this 9.5% of income. And you can see we use the Kaiser Family Foundation. So 30-year-old, no coverage, married, 2 children, here's his income. This is his subsidy that he could receive. So you can see his total premium would be $600. Again, I don't want to go through all those examples, but you'll see that some. This is a good one right here. 45-year-old with no employer coverage, single, making $55,000. Nope, not eligible for anything because he's over 400% of poverty level. How will the subsidies work? It is an advanceable tax credit, if you will, to the individual. So the individual goes on the exchange, they apply for a plan. Let's say the plan premium is $400, but they're getting a $300 subsidy. They only pay $100. So each month they only pay $100, and it is intended that the exchange or the federal government will pay the insurance company the other $300. Right? So the insurance company still gets the $400 premium. It's just where is it coming from? Now, if the employee has miscalculated his income then he can be required to pay that premium back, that subsidy that he wasn't eligible for. Yeah, who's going to collect that? Anyway, I don't want to go through all this. It is always based on the second lowest cost silver plan. You know, what I will say is, do you find this complicated? I mean, I see eyes glazing over, and I understand, and I do it every day, but it's actually complicated to explain. You have to be in this level of poverty level, then you have to look at the second level silver plan. You know what that is, right? You all got that in your heads. It's Plan CBKY under Anthem, just so you know. And and then you have to decide whether you're eligible for that or not. So it is confusing.
Company to just say we're not going to offer any insurance and pay the penalty, and not have these headaches.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. And we talked about that. There was a point in time where we weren't sure what employers were going to do. I will go back to what I said before. Most employers want to offer those benefits, and they do feel like it helps them to attract good employees. And I'm going to say this because I'm a broker. This is where your broker should really be doing this for you. It's a lot of work, but you really shouldn't have to do it because you're not going to know where to go for all these calculators. But I have talked to a number of employees. We did a small business summit, the Governor's Small Business Summit last May at the Westin, and like I said, Bill Hazel, who's Secretary of HHS, was talking with a number of folks in the group, in the audience, and asking who was thinking about dropping their insurance. And one fellow raised his hand, and he has a plumbing company. He has 9 employees, but he said his employees won't take the insurance anyway. Well, in his case, why should he keep offering it? They're not taking it. So why should he keep offering it? If you have a group where the employees are taking the insurance and it is important to them, then that's why you would.
To go into the exchange, right? I mean, if all your employees, you say, are eligible to go in the exchange, then an employer would say, go to the exchange then.
Yeah.
The people still pay for it, of course. Like you said, where we imagine we're going to get the money and we're so far in debt as it is. But,
What is the employer penalty?
It is a
you
good
got 100
question.
employees and you don't offer insurance.
So the first thing that happens, again, let's make it complicated, is did any of the employees go on the exchange and get a subsidy? So let's say that they did. So we take the number of full-time equivalents, we subtract the first 30, and then the remaining employees are multiplied by a factor to get the penalty. Sorry, that's not a great answer, is it?
I'm still confused.
But that's how it works. Seriously, you get to subtract the first 30. So let's say you have 58 full-time equivalents, but you only really have 25 full-time employees, and you don't offer insurance. You're required to because you have more than 50 full-time equivalents, right?
Right.
Somebody goes onto the exchange and gets a subsidy. You get penalized, right? So you take your full-time employees, 25 minus 30, you're not going to get a fine. I'm sorry. It is complicated.
Is there a way for an employer to figure that out?
Yeah, and there's a calculator, and I'll send it to you.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, there is a way to figure it out. You just have to do those calculations. And the first thing is, did an employee get a subsidy? That's the first thing. Now, I want to go back to your question or your statement. Tell me what you said. Oh, I know what I want to say. Okay. Yeah, I lost my thought for a minute there. So here's the other reason that you might want to offer employer insurance and not send them to the exchange. I'm disappointed by what's on the exchange. What I will say is there are limited plans on the exchange. Anthem, Optima, Southern Health, Coventry now is what they're called. Aetna have plans on the exchange. They are all true HMO plans, which means you must stay in the network or you have no coverage. Furthermore, the networks are more limited. There are fewer doctors participating on the exchange HMO than the off-exchange HMO. Furthermore, many of the plans exclude some hospitals altogether. Anthem's plans do not participate with any Bon Secours hospitals here in Richmond. That's at least half of them. Coventry plans only participate with Bon Secours hospitals and not HCA. Anthem's plans require, if you go to MCV, you pay a 50% coinsurance. So if your hospital bill is $10,000, you owe $5,000. So the networks are not as good on the exchange. Even individual plans off the exchange are better than individual on, but employer plans are even better than that. So that might be another reason. The other thing that we're seeing is the rates for group plans are quite often now better than individual plans. That wasn't always the case, but it is now.
All right, I think this might be a good chance to take a break. It's a lot to digest. Let's everybody take 10, 15 minutes, stretch your legs, get a cup of coffee, and we'll be back in 15 minutes. No, it's actually really good. It's adding to what's already
Can everybody kind of make it back, and we'll get it started again for the second half. And Debbie, we thank you very much. As people were talking, as I was listening earlier, they said real complicated. I said, yeah, it's kind of like giving a moving estimate. Sort of. But before we get started, does everybody have numbers? We go to the door prize. Make sure everyone has it. And then, where Rhonda went. Let me get that. All right. So does everybody have a number? Okay. You want to pull one, and we'll see what we got. You read it.
Let's see. Hold on. Let me make sure it's number now. 435180.
435180. All right, do it again. Yeah. I hope I wasn't on.
All right, 435185.
There we go. Here we go. All right. So Debbie.
Okay, so let's take a quick look at the marketplace. This is the exchange. It used to be called the exchange. I think now it's being rebranded as the marketplace. It's the same thing. It's Amazon for health insurance. We'll call it that. How about that? What was envisioned, that's the key word, it was a streamlined, easy-to-use, computer-friendly, neutral online marketplace for health insurance with one-stop shopping for Medicaid, CHIP, this is a child health insurance plan, subsidized coverage, and other individual coverage. So as I mentioned before, this is the only place to get the subsidy. Now, we have had a lot of glitches, obviously, with the federal exchange. Some of the state exchanges have worked pretty well, and I believe there's a new contractor on the federal, so we'll see what happens there. 3 governance options: state-owned and operated, state and federal partnership, and the federal fallback exchange, the FFE, and that's what we have here in Virginia. Again, they're still Virginia plans, but just on a federal platform. Coverage started January 1st. Our open enrollment started October 30th. October 1st. On September 30th, Anthem announced their plans that would be on the exchange for sale October 1st. So imagine the scramble on that one. Some of the plans as of October 3rd had not passed the Bureau of Insurance. Now pretty much everything has, but we were still waiting on a few of those. Here's the interesting thing. I'm not going to go through all this, but again, if you'd like to get this, please let me know and I'll send it to you. Here's a big misconception about individual plans. A lot of folks say, well, when I get sick, I'll just go get my plan on the exchange. That's not the way it's going to work. It's an open enrollment period from October 1 through March 30th. And the plans are going to be effective May 1st and beyond. So if you don't choose your plan in that open enrollment period, unless you have a qualifying event, you cannot enroll in a plan until the next October 1st. So as it stands now, we're at January the 24th. If you choose a plan today, it goes effective March 1st, which is a much longer waiting period than it used to be. Last year, if you chose a plan today, I could make it effective tomorrow, Saturday, Monday. But now there's a much longer waiting period. If you choose your plan prior to the 15th of the month, then it's effective the 1st of the following month. If you choose it after the 15th, it's effective the following 1st of the following 1st of the month. So if I choose my plan at the end of January, it won't go effective until March 1st, right? These are state exchanges on what different states have chosen. Shop exchange update. So remember that the shop didn't open on November 1st when it was scheduled to, and we don't know when it will, but that is for the small businesses. And states have the option to allow even businesses up to 100 to go onto the exchange. And there was a belief at one time that all small businesses would stop offering insurance and just send their employees onto the shop exchange. But again, the limitations in the networks and stuff have held some of that back, if you will. All right, inside and outside the exchanges. pricing changes. So community rating, this is the big explanation for why the rates are changing. This is a big part of it right here. We're going to community rating, which says that there cannot be more than a 3-to-1 difference in premiums for the healthiest versus the least healthy, if you will. So in Virginia, what we had before was a much bigger spread, about a 7 or 8-to-1, right? So this person on this plan could pay a rate at level 1 or go all the way up to 7 times that rate of a level 1 person. So maybe that level 1 person paid $200. If you were 7 times that, obviously you were paying $1,400. You had a major condition. And what we've done is we've squished down that spread to a 3-to-1. Well, as you can imagine, there is a certain cost to claims, right? Health insurance is meant to pay claims. And if we take this 7-to-1 and we squish it down, can we squish it down to the 1? If we do, we don't have enough premium to pay for those people who are expensive. So how are the rates squishing? They're squishing up. The higher end is coming down a little bit. The lower end is coming up a lot. And that's why those young 20, 25-year-olds are paying double or triple. That's also why healthy people are paying a lot more, because you no longer get credit for being healthy. Anthem used to rate levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1 being the best health rating. They can't do that anymore. So if you are a healthy person, you're going to pay the same as an unhealthy person if they're the same age as you and live in the same area. Again, it doesn't make a lot of sense because we know that somebody who's not healthy is going to use their insurance more. So, but we've eliminated all of that. We've gone to that 3-to-1. So this is the biggest reason for the rate change. Now, we talked a little bit about early renewal. We talked about this as well. For both individuals and groups, just about all the carriers allowed even small employers to have an early renewal December 1. So if you were renewing anytime in 2014, but in particular in the first quarter of 2014, you could renew your insurance December 1 of 2013 and keep that same old rating structure. And that was important for folks like Wes's group, where he's got a lot of young, healthy guys. I have a retail group. He has 5 retail stores. He has about 25 employees, mostly young male. We took that early renewal December 1. He got a 6.7% rate increase December 1. After we accepted it, they sent us what the actual January 1 renewal was, 78% rate increase. Now here's the deal. He took it December 1. He's got it till December 1 of this year. But then what happens? The 78's coming. And at that point, we got to figure out what we're going to do. Are we going to stay on that same plan? Are we going to make some changes? Will the law change some? Because all of these young males now have maternity and pediatric dental. Can we please take that off? Maybe that'll lower it a little bit.
I think the insurance companies will recognize the age and gender and cut brakes on the individuals.
Not allowed to. They're not allowed to. The law says how it's done, and they have to follow that, and those rates are filed with the BOI. So it simply has to be done that way. Yeah. I know. So that is our biggest reason. I'm sorry? Right now, exactly. You know, I really don't expect this law to go away. I think there was a time that people thought it would be repealed. I don't think it will. I think we're so far into it, it would take a heck of a lot to unravel it.
What if the politics change in 2016? And the Republicans have made no bones about they want to repeal it. Is that still on the table if there was?
Absolutely. If the politics change, but I think there was a thought that the politics would change in 2012 and they didn't. And I think that surprised a lot of people. There's an update actually today on my NAHU Newswire that the Republicans are gathering this weekend to prepare an alternate plan to healthcare reform. Well, it's a little bit late, I'll say. And unless the power shifts, I don't see how it's going to change. I mean, certainly the Senate would have to change in order for that to happen now. Then President Obama might veto it, but if they have enough to override the veto, then they could do it. if that happens, if the Republicans take power, I absolutely believe they will repeal this law immediately. But if not, I think we'll continue to deal with it. I just hope we'll make fixes to it. Like I said, this rating structure here, I mean, this is what New Jersey's had for a long time, and their rates have been outrageous, and they're one of the reasons that we wrote healthcare reform, was to fix it. Well, we fixed it to what they have, so that doesn't make any sense. I don't know about that logic. But that, and then just some of the unintended consequences of coverage. Everybody must have maternity care. Everybody must have pediatric care. Not everybody needs that, really. And at the end of the day, not everybody needs copays. I don't want copays. And so I don't want a plan with copays. I want a deductible. But we're forcing everybody down this funnel that you must have this richer insurance. And really, we don't have insurance anymore. We have prepaid health care. That's what we have. If you look at your plan and you pay a $20 or $30 or $40 copay even to go to the doctor, that's just prepaid in health care. It would be a lot less expensive for everybody if we didn't have that. But that's kind of where we are. That's a whole nother conversation. So I will tell you, my philosophy is when we went to HMOs, that's where we went wrong. Because HMOs introduced all of these copays, and they were really low premiums at first. It used to be that we had hospitalization insurance, $500 deductible, 80-20 plan, 80% coinsurance. They paid. You pay 20. There was no coverage if you went to the doctor, and there was no coverage if you got a prescription. Guess what? We went to the doctor a lot less. We paid for it. We didn't lose our homes over a doctor visit. And people use their insurance a lot less. When you say that it's a $2.50 copay for a prescription, and that's going to help me sleep, well, by golly, I'm going to take it, and so is everybody else, and we're really not going to sleep any better, but that's okay. We think we are. So, we just distance ourselves from the cost of health care. We don't really know what it costs anymore because we've paid copays for so long. And MRI is not a $250 copay. It's $3,000. And you don't need two of them most of the time. But if it's only $250, you might consider having another one, just to be sure. If it's $3,000, you might not even have the first one. You sure as heck aren't having the second one. So if we could get ourselves back to understanding what's the cost of care, I think that would help. All right, that's my lecture for the day. Premium taxes, reinsurance fees, comparative effective, the PCORI tax that I talked about before. The average tax cost will be over $500 for a family in 2014. These are new taxes. I'm not a big fan of taxes. All right, so let's see. The marketplace, plan design changes. I talked a little bit about the network changes. A lot of that is so that the insurance companies can manage expenses. If we can guide and direct people as to where they can go to the doctor, we can cut our costs a little bit. So if it's a true HMO and you can't go outside the network, and in a lot of cases you have to have a referral, the insurance company can manage those costs. And you almost have to do that if you think about it. If you think about someone who has not had insurance and now they have insurance for free because they get a subsidy, they are likely to use it a lot. So we have to manage those costs, and putting some of those network things in effect are important. We talked about subsidies a few minutes ago. Does a renewal date change help? I think it did. I know it did for most of my small employers, and I know it did for most of my individuals. However, to me, it is very sad. The hardest thing is it's only for a year. And unless the legislation changes, those big rate increases are coming December 1 of this year. So I'm hopeful that we'll make some changes before then. But in most cases, we've just delayed it for a year. What about self-funding? Anybody talked about that with their broker or heard about that recently? Yeah, it's a big consideration now for a lot of folks, but I warn you to be careful about it. Self-funding has typically been for the larger groups, 200 plus, at least 100 plus. And essentially, you as the employer hire a third-party administrator to collect all of the premiums and pay the claims yourself. There's a stop loss, so at a certain point, then a reinsurance would take effect. But it's a way for a larger group to, in a lot of cases, save money because they're taking in the premiums, they're managing the claims, they're not using an insurance for that first $15,000 or $20,000, $30,000. A small group cannot do that. If you're a small group of 20 employees and one person has cancer, boom, you've more than wiped out any premiums you're ever going to collect. So it's really not a good idea. A lot of people are looking at it. It is allowed in small groups, and a number of insurance companies have started promoting them. I don't have any groups that have taken them, and when we look at the dollars, it's scary. You just have to be careful with that. Let's see. All right, so for employers, what's about to change for you guys? These are all the things that are coming up: penalties, alternatives, affordability, cost sharing, subsidies, mandate increases. So, employers' responsibility. It's not just the mandate. If you're 50 plus full-time equivalents, obviously the mandate is there, but it is some of those things that we talked about in order to stay in compliance. MLR requirements, that's handled for the most part by our carriers. The Department of Labor notice that we talked about before. Significant funds have been directed to the DOL, so they are going to start performing audits. You definitely want to make sure that you're documenting that you're sending out your notices, how you're sending them out, when you send them out. Just want to be sure all of that's handled. If there is an employee complaint, there will be an audit. So you want to be careful about that. Non-compliance, up to $100 per day per violation. So an employee did not get his SBC when he was newly hired, and 15 days later you gave it to him, you could be up for a $1,500 penalty. So you want to be careful and make sure you're getting those out. Employer coverage requirements. Whether you're in the small or large group coverage, you still have to follow all of these rules: HIPAA, ERISA, and COBRA. So HIPAA is Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. We talked about that before. And that is basically a continuation of coverage. If they've had coverage before, they are eligible for this coverage. They just have to show it. And then if they leave your group has to give them a certificate of creditable coverage that they take to the next employer, and so forth. That's always been in place. ERISA, COBRA. Here's one thing I'll tell you about COBRA. If your broker says, I'm going to handle your COBRA myself, run the other way. COBRA is a real specific law with real specific guidelines. If you're more than 20 full-time eligible employees on a health insurance plan, even if necessarily they don't take it, if they're 20 or more full-time eligible employees, you need to have COBRA. And COBRA is not just, an employee left and he wants to stay on our group health plan, so he has to send us a check every month. That's taking advantage of COBRA. But the COBRA law says, number one, anytime an employee becomes eligible and enrolled in the health insurance plan, they need to receive a notice. And it has to be mailed, first-class mail, and documented in a particular way. When they leave, within a certain period of time, they have to receive a notice that they're eligible for COBRA. Then they have to receive a notice of what their COBRA package is. Then they have to either accept or decline COBRA. So I do see once in a while, I use a third-party administrator. I would always recommend that you use a third-party administrator. There's a lot more to it than just taking somebody's check. You have somebody who might be eligible for COBRA and they didn't get their notice, and then they didn't get COBRA. That is a big audit right there. So you just want to stay away from that. We talked about dependent children up to age 26. No more pre-X. Can't do that. All preventive services are covered at a zero copay. So no cost sharing there. No annual or lifetime maximums. Waiting period no more than 90 days. Now, we talked about this. Most employers used to have that their employees are eligible first of the month following 90 days. Well, that could actually be longer than 90 days. If I'm hired on January 10th and I'm eligible first of the month following 90 days, Well, it's actually going to be 3.5 months before I'm eligible because it's first of the month following. That's more than a total of 90 days. That's no longer allowed. So your plan really should say first of the month following 60 days. Then you're within that 90-day waiting period. Now, I had groups that had first of the month following 6 months. Can't do that anymore. I do have a group that hires employees on a temporary basis through a temporary staffing agency. And he hires them for 90 days to see how he thinks they're going to do. And then they become a full-time employee and have to meet his waiting period. So in that case, those employees are waiting about 5 months, 5.5 months before they're eligible for benefits. If he's hired through a staffing company as a temporary employee, he's not your W-2 employee. He does not have to meet this waiting period. He does have to meet it for the staffing company, and as you can imagine, this has opened up a big can of worms for staffing companies. But that's their problem, not yours, so something to consider. We talked about the cost sharing limits of 9.5, group health reporting and disclosure, clinical trial coverages now have to be on there. I talked about mental health parity and substance abuse visits now have to be on there. And then, of course, state insurance market reforms. Other employer requirements. This one just got delayed. We talked about this a minute ago because the IRS cannot define yet what does it mean to be highly compensated. So right now, you can provide one plan for your managers and a different health plan for all others. Eventually, you won't be able to do that because it's discrimination towards the highly compensated, but you still can right now. W-2 reporting. This is only for employers with 250 or more employees, so don't worry about that. In good shape there. And again, I put in parentheses for informational purposes. Auto enrollment, again, we don't know when this is going to happen. HHS has said it will at least be 2015 or beyond, but they have not stipulated when that's going to happen. When we were at break, I passed out a timeline for you. This is from the National Association of Health Underwriters, and this is a timeline of the implementation of the law and what's going to happen along the way. My card's on the back, so if you want this PowerPoint, just email me on my email address there. Here's what I will tell you. You can see that timeline came out February of 2013. Obviously, some things have changed since then. One of the biggest ones is the employer penalties. We still supposedly in 2014 as small groups have to offer insurance. We're just not going to be penalized if we don't. And remember, again, if you're under 50 full-time, you don't have to worry about that at all. All right, regarding exchanges. All employers that offer group health benefits are going to have responsibilities, even if they don't want to purchase exchange-based coverage or are not eligible. They have to give that exchange notice. They have to have coverage verification. So the individual mandate comes into play. They need to notify their employees if they're going to offer a group health plan and whether it meets standards. And if they are asked, they have to reply whether their employee took that. All right? Then it becomes the employee's responsibility. It's not your job to go out and buy him insurance. Once you've offered it, you're good. Subsidies and so forth. Okay. You have to provide the exchange notice. Again, we talked about the Fair Labor Standards Act. I think we've done most of this. Regardless of part-time or full-time, again, that's a big question that came up. Well, I only have to provide this. This is why the law is so complicated, because some things you have to do for full-time employees, some things you have to do for full and part-time employees, some things you have to calculate on seasonal employees, part-time and full-time. And that's why it's complicated. There are places in the law where 2 to 50 is defined as small group. Other places in the law where 2 to 100 is defined as small group. So you have to look at where it's defined in the law and what applies to that definition here, and then what it defines here. All right. This is the Fair Labor Standards Act. This is really just more detail, and I won't go into it. Basically, it's $500,000 in revenue. If you're taking in $500,000 in revenue, regardless of how many employees you have, you're required to send out that DOL notice. There's some exceptions. I'm not going to go through all that. That law's been in place since 90. Model exchange notices. This is a great place to go to get a template for your DOL notice. I'll be happy to email you the one that we use as well. And here's what has to be included on that DOL notice. They have to inform employees of whether they offer insurance and whether it's affordable. And from there, then the employee can go on to the marketplace and may or may not be eligible for an exchange. Minimum essential coverages, again, most of that is covered by the carrier, so you don't need to worry about that. All employers of all sizes who offer any type of coverage will need to know if the coverage that they offer meets the concept test. So even if you're under 50 full-time equivalents, you're seven employees. You want to make sure that the plan that you're offering does meet the requirements of ACA. You want to make sure it meets actuarial value, and you want to know about affordability. Yes. And they should. Coverage tests. So these are the different tests that you have. Sorry, I don't know why the left one's not showing, but minimum value, the actuarial, this is bronze right here, is 60%. So what that means is if I have a claim that's $1,000 and I have a bronze plan that's a 60% actuarial value, of my $1,000 claim, the insurance company must pay $600. Now, that's interpolated there within the whole expansion of the plan. So I could, in fact, have a $3,000 deductible first before they're going to pay anything. And then I might have an 80-20 co-insurance plan. So don't let that actuarial value fool you. A lot of people think, well, from the first dollar, they have to pay 60% and I only pay 40%. It doesn't necessarily work that way. It's through what we interpolate a whole year of claims might be. Are we covering at least 60% of that? Minimum essential coverage. So here are some individuals that that will have minimum essential coverages, but not necessarily on a group health plan or an individual plan. Like TRICARE meets that. A lot of the VA plans. FAMOUS is Virginia's child health insurance plan. If you're familiar with FAMOUS, or you might see commercials on FAMOUS. Most of the Medicare and then Medicaid, and then Medicare. People who are on Medicare, they meet coverage. That's the best deal going, by the way. If you have Medicare, you don't pay a high premium, but you get great coverage. Let's see. It doesn't, minimum essential coverage, though, doesn't necessarily include vision, workers' comp, disability, and so forth. Sorry, I was thinking about something. HHS will use data from the insurance exchange marketplaces to determine whether people have coverage as the individual mandate takes effect. So, supposedly, and I truly don't know how, I'm not trying to be smart, I don't know how they're going to determine whether everybody has coverage or not. Obviously, they're going to be able to look on the exchange and see who has it on the exchange, but unless you report to them, which under 250, you don't have to report it on a W-2. Unless you report to them, how are they going to know who within your organization has insurance or not? So I'm not sure how that's going to work. And for people who don't file taxes, how are they going to know? So I'm not sure how all that's going to work. But in any event, HHS is supposedly going to verify that. So is it party time? Because we have this delay of the employer mandate, should we all just hang out for a while? Here's what I would say to you, and NAHU is really strongly a proponent of this as well. Use this year as a planning year. This is the time to do it because there are no penalties for whether you offer insurance or not. Also use this year to run some comparative quotes because we now know what the new rates are going to be. In December of last year, we didn't necessarily know, but now we know. So if you offer insurance now, you did a December 1 early renewal, ask your broker to run a quote for you. What would it be now? So that you know what those costs are going to be. If you didn't offer insurance before, but you've been thinking about it, Go ahead and run those numbers and see what it will be. Here's what I will tell you, just from a personal standpoint. In my office, I have never offered health insurance because it was always less expensive for us to go into the individual market. For every one of my employees and for me, we were all better off to buy an individual plan. I'm not talking about the exchange. I'm just talking about going directly and buying an individual plan. And that's because, luck would have it, we're all healthy. And we all got a great health rating. Well, that's going away December 1 of this year. And so even though I'm not required, because I don't have anywhere near 50 full-time equivalents, I may start to offer group health insurance because it might help keep my rate down. And I don't want a true HMO plan that requires a referral. So I'm not real excited about getting a plan on the exchange or even off the exchange. I don't have to have a referral, but it's true HMO. So I may start to offer group health insurance. I'm going to have to figure out how we do it, but start to offer group health insurance because it might actually be a better deal for me personally. And I like my employees. I have good employees. I want to keep them happy. I want to keep them there. So what's interesting is where we thought a lot of people might drop it. We're seeing some employers who are thinking they might go ahead and offer it because it's going to be better than what they could have done by sending their employees to an individual plan. All that's kind of getting reversed. Now, we'll see what happens. So use 2014 as a planning year. This is your year to practice your counting. In other words, how many full-time equivalents do I have? How many part-times? How many seasonal? Use one of these calculators and figure out what would the penalty be. Do I pay the penalty or do I pay for insurance? What makes the most sense business-wise for me? But use this year as a planning year. Other points to consider. There are no penalties or employer responsibility requirements now, and yet most employers offer coverage today. And that goes back to why? Why are you offering it? You weren't required to. You probably didn't want to spend the money. Why were you offering it? You were offering it because you knew it helped you attract better employees, and then once you got them and you got them trained, it helped them stay on because that other guy down the street didn't offer benefits. So keep that in mind as you look at your calculations. Yeah, you're probably going to have to do some tweaks this year, but if you had a reason for offering it before, that reason probably still exists. What are you going to do to be able to continue to offer that? Penalties do increase over time. And so more employers may choose to pay the penalty early on, but remember, this legislation has been changed all along, right? Don't fool yourself into thinking that the penalty that you pay now to stop offering might not go up. If a lot of employers start dropping coverage and sending folks onto the exchange, I don't think it's too hard to imagine that HHS could propose a regulation that the penalties be increased so that they can cover those subsidies. So keep that in mind if that's a route that you choose to take. All right, recap and questions. So I'm not going to go through a lot of this. We've gone through most of this, but these are the things that are in place right now. If you're 50 plus, you do have an employer mandate. You just don't have the penalty. The W-2 reporting, again, is only for your large ones. This Cadillac tax is scheduled to begin in 2018. Remember, the discrimination got pushed back as well. We'll see what happens with this Cadillac tax. Auto enrollment, again, we have no effective date at this point. We don't know what it's going to be. Market reforms, most of these things are in place right now. Small group deductible cap, maximum out of pocket, and of course the exchanges are all in place right now. This is the one that I talked about earlier that just got delayed. We've talked about all of these. So are you ready? Armed robbery, eh? I'm in for being out of compliance with the federal guideline. I don't think we'll be in jail, but there are lots of things to consider. So I will open it back up to questions if you have questions, and if not, I'm done.
Any questions at all? She was very thorough, but you got to have some questions. Okay.
Sorry, I know it's a lot to take in, and I know it probably is confusing at some points. What I was telling the ladies over here is you want to figure out where you fit in this law, and then you want to follow the guidelines where you fit. If you're below 50, then what are my guidelines below 50? If you're 50 to 100, what are my guidelines? You can get your arms around it. It's just figuring that part out. I'm talking about individuals, small groups, mid-market groups, and large groups here. And not all of that applies to everybody in the room.
Currently, what is the penalty now?
You know, I'm sorry, somebody asked me that question before, and I should know that. I'm so used to using my calculator. I want to say it's around $2,000 or $2,500 per employee. $2,600 kind of sticks in my head per employee. But remember that you take the number of employees that you have, and you subtract the first 30, and then you multiply that penalty amount times the remaining employees.
That still sounds about the same price as if you had 100 people, what the premiums would be on health insurance there.
And what's the benefit that you get? You know, the benefit you get from paying a penalty is absolutely nothing, except that you avoided it. What's the benefit you get from paying just about the same amount for health insurance? Exactly.
And you comply with the law. So I personally thought that was great. I feel better, like it's not such a big mountain to climb anymore. And, you know, I actually use Debbie and her services, and she does a great job for us. Not only is she very knowledgeable about what's going on, but her service with her organization is better than I've ever had before. So if you guys are looking for a broker, I would encourage you to talk to Debbie. She's very good, or at least maybe she could point somebody out to you in her organization, her association, that could do something for you as well. So I would like to thank you for coming out very much. You did a great job. And were there any more call-outs or anything, Roger, giveaways, or 2 more door prizes? Okay, let's do that. Oh, big hand for Debbie. Four, 3, 5, 1, 6, 6. Got a winner. All right, Billy won it. Again, guys, thanks for coming out. Just remember when you go back to your companies that your employees are looking to you for leadership. Those guys are out there every day packing the boxes, loading the trucks, moving the furniture. They're out there on the road. They're working hard, and they make it possible for all of us to make a living, and you're doing the same thing for them. So I would encourage you to really, really seriously consider giving health care and good coverage. And with that being said, have a great day. Everybody be careful. It's still pretty icy and cold out there. But thanks for coming, and watch your email for the next meeting. Thank you.